On the day of the palace upheaval, my husband chose without hesitation to abandon me and our child, taking my elder noble consort sister with him. I watched him right away, disappearing beyond the chaos of the palace walls. I could only hold my young child tightly in terror and despair. We were left utterly defenseless and were eventually slaughtered under the blades of the marauding soldiers. Our bodies were hung on the city walls, exposed to the wind and rain, ridiculed by the onlookers. The past glory and wealth were now a deep and painful humiliation. Everyone knew that my husband deeply loved my elder sister, yet no one showed any pity for our fate. At that moment, I finally understood that familial bonds are so fragile in the face of life and death. When I closed my eyes, the only sound that echoed in my ears was the desperate crying of my child. To my amazement, when I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day when my parents were selecting husbands for us. Ding! RoyalStory reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. In the courtyard, flowers were in full bloom and colorful butterflies fluttered about. My elder sister and I stood side by side, feeling as though we were in another world. Our father sat authoritatively in the hall, with the sons of various nobles before him, each graceful and accomplished. However, at this moment, my heart was stirred like great waves. I was no longer the naive and ignorant girl I used to be. I knew clearly that choosing a husband was not just about marriage, it concerned my destiny and future. Memories of my past life vividly appeared in my mind, Louis Chen's resolute back as he left with my elder sister. That moment of utter despair, the cries of a child, it was an insurmountable chasm in my heart. In this life, I would never repeat the same mistakes. My mother held a portrait of Louis Chen, her satisfaction growing the more she looked at it. She turned to me and said, "Our Qingyao should marry the legitimate son of the Duke Liu." Louis Chen, the legitimate son of the Duke, came from a distinguished family and was accomplished in both talent and looks. In my mother's eyes, he was the ideal son-in-law, only such a man was worthy of me. Yet, having lived another life, I knew this choice would push me into an abyss. Louis Chen was far from being an ideal match. In this life, I was determined to defy my mother's expectations. I knew that if I married Louis Chen again, endless suffering and humiliation awaited me. I had to make a different choice. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my courage and slowly said, "Mother, Louis Chen is indeed excellent, but he does not like me. I hope to find someone who truly cares for me and can weather the storms with me." Mom looked at me in surprise, seemingly unable to believe I would say such words. Her brows furrowed slightly, her tone carrying a hint of reprimand. "Qing Yao, do you know what you are saying? Such a good match as Yi Chen is what many people dream of, how can you give up so easily?" I looked at my obedient and timid elder sister standing to the side, unconsciously clenching my palms. Memories of my past life surged to my mind. She had long privately pledged herself to Louis Chen. Yet, at this moment, she still wore that weak and harmless expression, seemingly having no objection to mother's words. This was also why I discovered after marriage that Louis Chen and she had long been secretly involved. She had hidden it too well. Burying my resentment deep within, I took a deep breath. I walked to my sister's side, held her hand and softly said, "Sister, Louis Chen is talented and charming, do you also have feelings for him?" Hearing this, my elder sister blushed slightly, lowering her head, not daring to look at me. Her silence made me clench my palm tighter. Although I had long known about her and Louis Chen, what I could not bear the most was. In order to save her, Louis Chen abandoned me and our child in the midst of a rebel army, leading to our brutal deaths. Later, to force her to hand over the jade seal, our bodies were even hung on the city walls. Exposed to the wind and rain, left for mockery. In this life, I would never let such things happen again. Mother noticed the situation and asked gently, "Yan Ran, if you have feelings, why not speak up?" My elder sister's face changed, and she quickly waved her hands. "Mother, I couldn't dare to think this way. My younger sister is the legitimate daughter and only deserves such a good match." Inwardly, I scoffed. My elder sister's modesty and retreat were mere surface, her true intentions were much deeper. So, I smiled and said to my mother, "Mother, I know sister also has her heart set. Louis Chen is indeed a very good match, but I'd rather see my sister fulfill her wishes. As for me, perhaps I can find another suitable husband." Mother hesitated for a moment before nodding. If this is the case, then you will follow your own wishes. Qing Yao, I will arrange your marriage differently. My heart relaxed, finally defusing this crisis. Though my elder sister's expression remained complicated, she ultimately said no more. Perhaps she had not expected me to be so resolute or imagined I would so willingly step aside. After all, at this moment in the past life, I had insisted that I would marry no one but Louis Chen. In my previous life after marriage, Louis Chen was extremely indifferent to me, and even thought about divorcing me. I also tried to change his attitude, but it was all in vain. Those years, for me, were nothing short of a nightmare. Meanwhile, my elder sister became a noble consort, envied by everyone. Perhaps it was because she had privately pledged herself to Louis Chen long ago, or perhaps her talent and beauty had captivated him. But no matter what, she had long been the moonlight in Louis Chen's heart. I had already become her shadow, even less significant than a fly speck on the wall. Yet she continued to shine brightly in the limelight. Every time I watched my elder sister bask in her courtly glory, my heart was filled with complex emotions. The sisterly bond we once shared was nothing but an illusion. In its place was endless jealousy and envy. Envy for the emperor's favor she enjoyed, and for being the moonlight in my husband's heart. I tried to hide my emotions, but whenever my elder sister's figure appeared, the pain in my heart would surge again, uncontrollably. If I could live my life over, I would never walk the same path again. In those years, I struggled painfully in that marriage. I once thought he had truly loved me. When I gave birth to our child, he was clearly overjoyed. But every glance he cast at my elder sister, every drunken murmur, would pierce my heart like a knife. In the end, a palace coup swept in, pushing everything to the brink. My young son and I died tragically in the palace upheaval, our bodies hung on the city wall, becoming the talk over tea. When I needed help the most, Louis Chen chose to stay out of it. He never intervened, only to ensure my elder sister's safety. He didn't even care to give our bodies a proper burial. It was at that moment I understood everything. In his eyes, my child and I were insignificant. But my elder sister was his true love. Our lives couldn't compare to her safety. Though my life had ended, my soul still roamed above the imperial city. The resentment and sorrow in my heart couldn't be appeased. With endless grief and hatred, I watched them two indulge in pleasure, disregarding human decency. In the end, it was a city guard who couldn't bear it, who gave us a proper burial, allowing my child and me to rest in peace. My elder sister stood by, timidly looking at Louis Chen's portrait, with complex emotions in her eyes. She glanced at me secretly, as if wanting to say something, but finally lowered her head. She seemed dissatisfied with mother's arrangements. But in the previous life, she had clearly pledged herself to Louis Chen long ago. It was because of this that Louis Chen always resented me for ruining their relationship. I clenched my fists, took a deep breath, unsure why my elder sister behaved this way. In the previous life, I was kept in the dark, insisting on marrying Louis Chen, in a way snatching her relationship. This lifetime, I would hand Louis Chen over to her, but why does she still seem unwilling? At this moment, mother was still happily discussing the merits of Louis Chen, totally unaware of the struggle on my elder sister's face. "Madam, should we listen to Yanran's opinion?" Father slowly spoke. Finally, father noticed my elder sister's state. Mother was slightly stunned, then turned to look at my elder sister. "What do you think?" My elder sister raised her head, hesitated for a moment, and finally mustered the courage to say, "Mother, I actually..." Her voice grew smaller, but she finally finished, "I don't want to marry Louis Chen." Mother's face darkened instantly, clearly surprised by my elder sister's response. "Why? Louis Chen is excellent in every way, how could you be dissatisfied with such a good match?" My elder sister lowered her head in silence, clearly unwilling to answer directly. Marriage is about mutual feelings. If Yanran has someone she admires, there's no use forcing it. Why not ask if Yanran has someone in mind, and then we can make plans? Father comforted from the side. But my elder sister stammered, unable to say a word for a long time. Seeing her behave this way, I suddenly remembered something important. In a previous life at this moment, my elder sister had likely already had a chance encounter with the incognito emperor. In less than half a month, the emperor's decree conferring concubinage would reach the Zhao family residence. If she agreed to marry Louis Chen now, she wouldn't be able to become an imperial concubine. However, she wasn't entirely indifferent to Louis Chen, which is why she was so conflicted earlier before making up her mind. But I have no intention of letting her have her way. Since Louis Chen's love for her is so deep, and she's not indifferent to him either. In this life, I'll make sure they end up together, which might actually be a good thing. Seeing my elder sister hesitate, unable to utter a single word, I took a step forward and pointed at her waist sachet, saying, "If sister is concerned about anything, just say the word. Qing Yao and our parents are here and can make decisions for you. It's because I know you have feelings for Louis Chen that I'm unwilling to marry him." As soon as I said this, my parents' expressions changed. The sachet at her waist was a match to the one Louis Chen treasured daily like a precious gem. At first, I thought it was just an ordinary, old sachet and casually threw it away. When Louis Chen found out, he almost went mad and nearly strangled me. Seeing the elder sister bow her head in silence, my mother's face turned exceedingly grim. It's known that my mother and the Madam of the Duke's mansion were old friends who had arranged this marriage long ago. Although the Madam of the Duke's mansion passed away years ago, this engagement had been pre-planned. Although propriety dictated that Louis Chen and I had little contact. It was precisely for this reason I declared that I would marry no one but Louis Chen. But now informing her that her other daughter had secretly taken her birth daughter's place in this engagement enraged her. Ultimately, it was her upbringing that restrained her hand from slapping me, her hand tightening on the furniture. She looked at me and said, "Qing Yao, explain what's really going on." I glanced at my worried mother and knew she was truly angry, so I began to talk in detail. A few days ago, I and Shan Shan went to the outskirts of the city to play when we happened to meet Louis Chen. And I noticed the sachet at his waist looked familiar. I overheard some gossip. I asked Shan Shan to investigate and learned that Louis Chen had a beloved, and the sachet was made by her. At this point, I paused briefly, observed my elder sister's ashen face, and continued. But the embroidery technique on the sachet was quite unique. In the entire capital, only my sister knew this embroidery technique. Being suspicious, I investigated further and found that indeed, my sister was Louis Chen's beloved. The sachet at my sister's waist and Louis Chen's sachet were indeed a pair. Having heard this, my mother nearly gasped for breath in anger, and I quickly went to calm her down. Even though what I said was fabricated, it was a fact. This was private exchange, so how could my mother not be angry? Hearing this, even my usually gentle father's face changed. "You disobedient girl." As he swept his sleeve, he was about to invoke family law, but I stopped him. "Father, don't be angry. Since sister and Louis Chen are fond of each other, why not let them be?" My mother, hearing this, angrily slapped my hand. "You have a wooden brain. The engagement with the Duke's mansion was a good one, initially meant for you. Even though it was a verbal agreement, this marriage was yours. Your elder sister has stolen it from you." Hearing this, I coldly laughed in my heart. Whoever wants that broken engagement with Louis Chen can have it. It's best if the two of them stay locked together and don't come out to harm others. Seeing my elder sister kneeling on the ground and shedding tears in her defense, my mother saw that I wasn't upset and waved her hand. "Go back to your room and confine yourself. We'll discuss this matter later." In the end, my mother softened. My elder sister confined herself in the yard for 3 days. Louis Chen heard rumors and hurriedly came to our house to propose. Of course, it was me who spread the rumor. When my mother saw Louis Chen visit in person, her expression became very complicated. Louis Chen stepped in and eagerly said, "Mrs. Zhao, I'm here today to ask for Yanran's hand in marriage. We had an arrangement before, and I'm here to formally propose." Hearing this, my mother's face turned sour. Louis Chen knew he had a verbal agreement with me yet still carried on privately with Zhao Yanran. Thus, she didn't treat him kindly. Seeing my mother displeased, I quickly stepped forward to console her. "Mother, sister truly has feelings for Louis Chen. Since they cherish each other, why not let them be?" My mother gave me a look of disappointment but had no other solution. "We've come to this point, the Duke's mansion's betrothal gifts have arrived. What else can I do?" Then she gave a fierce glare at Louis Chen, treating him coldly. My sister came out from her room and, hearing all this, her eyes showed a complicated and conflicted look. But being put on the spot, she could only nod and agree to the marriage. Louis Chen, seeing this, showed a look of utter joy. Like a youthful fool, he abandoned all courtesy and picked her up, spinning her several times. Seeing this, my mother disdainfully wrinkled her brow. She waved her hand and led me away from my sister's courtyard. After the marriage was arranged, Louis Chen stayed for dinner before leaving our residence. I looked at my elder sister, her face showing rare emotions beyond her usual facade. I raised my eyebrow. It seemed things weren't that simple. Sure enough, my elder sister still couldn't let go of becoming an imperial concubine. Zhao Yanran was trimming flowers in the garden when she saw Xiaolan running in quickly and asked, "How's it going? Have you contacted the emperor?" Her face was full of urgency, a far cry from her usual gentle and timid demeanor in front of others. Xiaolan drooped her head and fearfully knelt down. "Miss, I searched all the places where His Majesty likes to go, but I couldn't find any trace of him. And the token you gave me, I accidentally lost it." As soon as Xiaolan finished speaking, the vibrant flower in Zhao Yanran's hand was also cut off by her. She turned and slapped Xiaolan across the face. Her eyes stared deadly at Xiaolan, as if she wanted to devour her. "You lost the token the emperor gave?" Sensing the coldness in her voice, Xiaolan trembled uncontrollably, kneeling and begging for forgiveness. "Miss, I know I was wrong. Please, forgive me." Looking at the maid who kept begging for mercy, Zhao Yanran's slender nails dug into her palm, almost drawing blood. In a few days, she was to marry Louis Chen. If she couldn't contact the emperor before the wedding, all her previous efforts would be in vain. While she was in anxious distress, I listened to the maid's report, carefully playing with the pure white, jade-like pendant in my hand. I always knew my elder sister was no pushover. She couldn't have agreed to marry Louis Chen so easily without some ulterior motive. Sure enough, as soon as she returned to her courtyard, she was scheming to have Xiaolan contact the emperor. She probably hoped the emperor would confer a title on her before the wedding. This way, not only would she satisfy the man's victorious psychology, but also become someone Louis Chen couldn't easily attain. In my previous life, I married Louis Chen not only because I loved him deeply. There was another reason. Due to an accident, I had an intimate relationship with Louis Chen, and he felt pressured to marry me. Although I didn't know the exact details of that accident, my intuition told me it had something to do with Zhao Yanran. So, after being reborn, I had people closely monitor her every move. When I saw her trying to contact the emperor, I guessed her intention immediately. I held up the pendant to the sunlight to examine it. In the sunlight, the pendant looked extremely beautiful. As the wedding drew nearer, my elder sister and I, along with our mother, kept her confined to the mansion under the pretext of preparing for marriage. Even her maids weren't allowed out. This made her so anxious that ulcers appeared on her chin. Her emotions were extremely unstable. The wedding day soon arrived. Apparently, she realized there was no room for maneuver. Zhao Yanran was filled with pent-up frustration. Her former gentle demeanor was completely gone, replaced with a scowl. When I saw her appear at the entrance of my courtyard, I raised an eyebrow without surprise. I warmly stepped forward and held her hands. "Sister, why aren't you sleeping yet? Tomorrow is your wedding day. You should get some rest." Seeing my concerned expression, she frowned in irritation, a hint of viciousness flashing in her eyes. "It's nothing. I'm about to get married and wanted to have a private chat with you." Noticing her troubled look, I smiled and invited her in. She seemed agitated seeing my calm demeanor. "Sister, I took your fiancé. You aren't angry with me, are you?" Seeing her expression, I sneered inwardly, knowing she was here to gloat. "I wish you two a lifetime of misery together." But outwardly, I had to maintain appearances. I stepped forward and held her hand gently. "Sister, you didn't take my fiancé. You and Louis Chen are meant for each other, which is a good thing. I sincerely wish you both well." A flicker of dissatisfaction flashed in her eyes, seemingly unhappy with my indifferent attitude. "Sister, I'm really glad you see it that way. Actually, I've been worried that you would resent me because of this." I shook my head. "Sister, we are family. No matter what happens, there should be no rift between us. She held my hand tightly, her face plastered with a fake smile. Before leaving, she couldn't help but ask again. Sister, you really don't like Chen? Seeing the urgency in her eyes, as if she needed to prove something, I displayed a fitting bitter smile and lowered my head without responding. Seeing this, a smug smile slowly appeared on her lips, seemingly easing some of her inner frustrations. Feeling good, my elder sister finally recalled the purpose of her visit. She quickly signaled Xiaolan with her eyes, who brought over some delicacies. A plate of finely crafted pastries, laced with sedatives. Sister, these are pear pastries I specially requested from the kitchen. Please try them. Seeing her expectant look, I sneered inwardly. She still couldn't give up on becoming an imperial consort. She went through all this trouble just to make me unconscious and marry me off as her substitute. If discovered, it would be too late as I have already been in the Duke's mansion. She could even turn the tables and slander my reputation. All for marrying my beloved. I didn't hesitate to harm my elder sister and take her place. Looking at my elder sister's anxious expression, I suppressed my mocking smile. In her expectant gaze, I picked up the pear cake and took small bites. Then I chatted with her for a while, and finally, under her hopeful eyes, I fell asleep. Meanwhile, my elder sister's maid circled behind Shanshan, preparing to knock her out. In the gaze of my elder sister's anticipation and Xiaolan's fear, both of them fainted simultaneously. I leisurely stood up, looked at the two people lying on the ground, and dusted off my sleeves. I ordered the secret guards to send them back. These secret guards were specially requested from my mother. Although the Zhao family is a family of civil officials, there are still 1 or 2 secret guards in the mansion to protect the family. Elder sister had no other confidants in the mansion except Xiaolan. The reason she was able to become a noble consort in her previous life was due to Liu Yichen's secret support and the emperor's favor. She relied on men from the beginning to the end. The next day, when the maid who was dressing her up woke her, she still hadn't reacted to what had happened. When she realized, she threw a huge tantrum. Even when applying makeup, she did so reluctantly. When she saw me and my mother through the mirror, her eyes were almost overflowing with resentment. Mother frowned upon seeing it, not understanding her current demeanor. Hearing the noise of drums and gongs outside, it seemed like the wedding procession from Duke Lu's mansion had arrived. Even though I no longer had feelings for Liu Yichen, hearing the commotion outside made me uncontrollably sad. One had to know that when Liu Yichen married me in her previous life, it was not a fraction as lively as today. Elder sister, who was putting on makeup, looked in the mirror at my disappointed expression, and her resentment gradually turned into glee. Zhao Qingyao, even if you are the legitimate daughter of the Zhao family, you were still overshadowed by me taking the position of the eldest daughter, and your beloved still prefers me, soon to become my husband. Although the emperor might make her his concubine, there's no way to change things now. Only by taking Zhao Qingyao's beloved can she find solace. When Liu Yichen came to fetch the bride, I took another look at him. Today, he was full of joy and high spirits. The red flush on his face and the gleam in his eyes added to his charm. In his eyes, there was only my elder sister, not even sparing a glance at me when he passed by. I raised my eyebrows and clenched my fists. In this life, there will be no entanglement between us. It's just a pity that I will never have the chance to be that child's mother again. However, I won't let their marriage go so smoothly. Just as Liu Yichen was leading my elder sister into the bridal sedan, a wait from afar captured everyone's attention. An imperial decree to confer a concubine title arrived at the Zhao mansion on this day. As the head eunuch unrolled the decree, everyone knelt down. Hear the decree. By the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees that the daughter of Grand Scholar Zhao Yanran, is granted the title of second-class lady. She must enter the palace to serve immediately, by imperial order. As soon as the head eunuch finished reading the decree, everyone, except for the joyful Zhao Yanran, had a change of expression. It was known that Zhao Yanran was supposed to be the bride of today's wedding feast. Now, with the sudden arrival of the decree conferring her as a concubine, everything was thrown into chaos. The head eunuch, puzzled by the lack of response, looked around and saw my father rising with cold sweat on his face. "May I trouble you, sir, did His Majesty inquire about my daughter's situation before issuing the decree? Today is my daughter's wedding day. She has just gotten on the bridal sedan. What should we do? Seeing my father's sweating face, the head eunuch's expression changed as well. He hastily inquired about what was going on. Louis Chen, watching the dramatic scene before him, clenched his teeth. He quickly looked up and met my smiling eyes. A surge of nameless anger rose in him. He stood up and strode towards me. Seeing him approach, I deliberately flashed a provocative smile. At that moment, seeing my smile, the last thread of his rationality snapped. He grabbed me by the neck and lifted me up. Was this your doing? Didn't you harm me enough in your previous life? Do I have to kill you to get peace? His string of questions confirmed my suspicions. Louis Chen, he too, had been reborn. But I didn't answer him. Instead, with an innocent look, I said, "Brother-in-law, what are you talking about?" Qing Yao doesn't understand. Seeing me still feigning innocence, Louis Chen's grip tightened, making my face turn as red as a liver. My terrified mother immediately reacted, rushing over to slap Louis Chen's arm. "Yi Chen, what are you doing? Let go of Qing Yao." Her sharp voice startled everyone, and they rushed forward to break up the fight. My father and the head eunuch also hurriedly separated Louis Chen from me. Ultimately, the wedding ended without a conclusion. The head eunuch, unable to make decisions, had to return to the palace to report to the emperor. Before leaving, seeing Louis Chen's vicious gaze, I provocatively smirked at him. The real show was just beginning. Sure enough, that evening, the emperor's guards contacted Shan Shan with the token. Shan Shan returned the token to the emperor as I instructed. She simply said that everything was beyond her control, and she had no fate with the emperor. But how could these words not be teasing the ruler of a country? After all, 3 days ago, I had used my elder sister's name to confess my feelings to the emperor, claiming I would marry none other than him. Now the imperial edict had been issued, and to reject it was to reject his own dignity. Not rejecting it would be openly competing with a minister for a wife. And we are talking about the marriage of the duke's family, knowing the duke's protective nature and his military power. The emperor could only swallow this loss. The next day, there was an imperial edict bestowing marriage, granting by Weiwei, the daughter of the Grand Tutor, as the primary wife of Louis Chen, and Zhao Yanran as the noble concubine. This neither compromised the emperor's dignity nor wronged the minister. It was at that moment, upon hearing the edict, that my elder sister fainted from a surge of anger. Our father, fearing trouble, packed her off to the duke's mansion overnight. Even on the 3rd day's return, our father took us to a temple in the mountains early for blessings. Thus, my elder sister and Louis Chen were given a cold shoulder. But how could I let them off so easily? I instructed Xiaolan to spread the story of my elder sister, Louis Chen, and the emperor's love triangle throughout the capital. In no time, the tale of their love became the talk of the town. Meanwhile, my elder sister wasn't idle in the duke's mansion. That Grand Tutor's daughter was not an easy person to deal with. She oppressed my elder sister all day, often leveraging the emperor's name to pressure Louis Chen, keeping him in her courtyard every day. My elder sister sent several letters home, seeking family support. My mother, being soft-hearted, allowed her to return. Seeing my elder sister visibly more haggard, my mother couldn't help but feel pained. She hurriedly prepared her favorite dishes for her. Holding her hand, she inquired about her recent well-being. I too took the opportunity to ask, "Sister, are you doing well at the Duke's mansion? Didn't brother-in-law dote on you like his precious gemstone?" Upon hearing this, a trace of discomfort flashed across my elder sister's face. She was too embarrassed to admit she hadn't even seen Louis Chen in days. But not wanting to show weakness in front of me, she stiffly replied, "Of course, everything is wonderful. Yi Chen treats me with utmost love and care." She even unconsciously revealed the faint red marks on her neck, which she had pinched herself, under the thin veil. Seeing my elder sister's deliberate actions, I cooperatively displayed a trace of disappointment in my eyes. My elder sister noticed, her expression slightly relaxed, and she straightened up, leaning back. But she froze at my next words. "I heard from father that there are urgent battles at the border. I wonder if the emperor will send Louis Chen to assist the elderly Duke Liu." My elder sister couldn't sit still. She and Louis Chen had been married only a few days and had not yet consummated their marriage. If he really went to war, it might take a year or more. Moreover, in case of any accident, wouldn't she be left a widow just after entering the family? Seeing my elder sister's restlessness, I continued innocently. But it would be no matter if brother-in-law went to the border. Sister, if you're bored, you can come back often to visit us and keep company with mother and me. Hearing this, my elder sister couldn't sit still anymore. She had finally left the Zhao manor, albeit unexpectedly gaining the status of a noble concubine. But given Lui Chen's fondness for her, if she could get rid of that wretched Bai Weiwei, she could become the undisputed mistress of the duke's mansion. Returning to the Zhao manor without a proper title, living humbly as before, was something she refused. Her biological mother was just a lowly concubine maid who died giving birth to her prematurely. Though she was recorded under the primary wife, she was not her real daughter, hence the servants' disrespectful attitude compared to mine. Some servants even put on a facade. Her life there was uncomfortable enough, and she was finally away from the Zhao manor. Only a fool would return to suffer. Seeing my elder sister's lowered head and silence, I continued. If only sister could have a little nephew for me to hold sooner. I saw our aunt's family recently had another little boy, cute as a button. My sister's child would surely be even better. As expected, within half a month, the old Duke Lu returned to court due to an old injury. The emperor decreed Lui Chen to replace the old duke in guarding the border. News of Bai Weiwei's critical illness spread that very day. Lui Chen, citing his wife's poor health and needing care, declined the emperor's order. Angered, the emperor publicly scolded Lui Chen for neglecting his duty to the state and immediately dismissed him from his court position. The old duke had to surrender part of his military power to appease the emperor's wrath. The old duke was utterly disappointed in his son. Yet Lui Chen seemed indifferent, indulging in poetic romance with my elder sister after dealing with Bai Weiwei. The emperor, already displeased with Lui Chen over my elder sister's affair, now loathed him even more. Only out of consideration for the old duke's concession of military power did he turn a blind eye. The decline of the duke's mansion became evident. However, Lui Chen couldn't care less. My elder sister was pregnant, and he was now completely immersed in the joy of impending fatherhood. Mother's face showed a trace of sigh and disappointment upon hearing these things. She shook her head and softly said, "I really didn't expect that Lui Chen would be such a person. I used to think he was graceful and talented, but I never expected him to be so indulged in love without any ambition." Seeing the look on mother's face, I understood her feelings. Lui Chen used to be regarded as the perfect son-in-law in mother's heart, but now he is so disappointing. "Mother," I said softly. "Sometimes people change because of love. Maybe my elder sister and he being together is the life he wants. I just hope that he can take on responsibilities at crucial moments and not let my elder sister suffer." Mother sighed after hearing this. "I hope so. If your elder sister can live happily, then let them be." I didn't reply because I knew exactly what kind of person Lui Chen was. He is a thorough love-obsessed person, only caring about romance and lacking a sense of the bigger picture and responsibility. As time went by, my elder sister's temper became extremely bad after she got pregnant. Bai Weiwei also sought support from her maternal family, fighting fiercely with my elder sister every day. My elder sister vented her anger by hitting and scolding servants, causing chaos in the entire Duke Lu's mansion. Duke Lu was extremely displeased with her behavior. And Lui Chen gradually lost his patience too, often showing impatience towards her, no longer coaxing her as he used to. One day, mother received the news and worriedly told me, "Qing Yao, your elder sister is not doing well in Duke Lu's mansion. She said that Lui Chen is not as considerate to her as before. Life is very hard there." Hearing this, I couldn't help but smile faintly. It seems that Lui Chen doesn't love her that much after all. How long has it been and he already doesn't want to coax her? As I calculated the days with the passing time, the Marquis Lu who quelled the rebellion in the previous life was about to return to the capital. The coup in the previous life was quelled by him. The rebels were composed of refugees and mountain bandits, with no discipline, committing all kinds of atrocities like burning, killing, and looting. Because this uprising took place within the palace and they gathered very quickly, there wasn't even time to dispatch troops before they reached the capital. Thinking of this, I also had a plan in mind. One day, mother saw me worried and asked, Qing Yao, what's wrong? Did something happen? I shook my head and gently said, nothing, mother, I just heard that the Marquis Lu is about to arrive in the capital. I want to see him. Hearing this, mother smiled and pointed at my head, saying I had a nature that loves excitement. On the day the Marquis Lu returned to the capital, I, as I wished, saw his figure on a tea house with mother. He indeed still had the same majestic and heroic demeanor as in the previous life. I pretended to be curious and admire him. Mother naturally noticed my budding feelings at a glance and immediately became happy and wanted to arrange a marriage for me. However, father disagreed. He and the Marquis Lu were in opposing camps in the court and naturally didn't want me to marry him. Father was furious. Do you know that the Marquis Lu is ruthless and has killed countless people? He has even killed 2 wives. He barely returns to the capital twice a year. How can you marry and endure such suffering? Mother was also shocked when she heard this. She had completely forgotten about the Marquis Lu's reputation for bringing misfortune to his wives and hurriedly tried to dissuade me. But usually obedient me, this time became very rebellious. Father, in his anger, confined me to the ancestral hall. Fortunately, I had Shan Shan, my capable assistant. That night, she helped me pack my luggage and quietly sent me out of the residence. Before I left, I instructed Shan Shan once more about the excuse to be given to others, then left at ease, heading towards the northern frontier. Although I had secret guards accompanying me, I still kept a low profile. Not to mention my clothes were tattered, even my face was smeared with soot. After all, in these times, for a woman to travel such a long distance, safety was paramount. Half a month later, I finally arrived at the northern frontier, without any surprises or dangers. The fatigue from the long journey and the tension made me faint just as I entered the city gates. Before collapsing, I deliberately revealed the fine silk inside my coarse clothes. I also wiped some of the soot off my face to ensure that the people around me would notice my unusual status. Standing next to me was the young general who had handled the post-mortem arrangements for me and my child in the previous life. He was sharp-eyed and kind-hearted, and I believed he would notice my identity and lend a helping hand. Sure enough, when I woke up, I found myself lying in a simple but clean room. There was a faint sound of footsteps in the room. Looking closely, the handsome face of the Marquis Lu appeared in front of me. He looked at me with teasing eyes as if he wasn't surprised by my presence at all. Miss Zhao, why did you come to the northern frontier instead of staying in the capital? Hearing this, I blushed deeply, stammering and not daring to speak. I had instructed Shan Shan to spread rumors the next day through some beggars, saying that the second miss of the Zhao family insisted on marrying the Marquis Lu after seeing him from afar at the tea house, and had escaped overnight to the northern frontier after being confined by her father. Rumors spread quickly. Even without deliberately inquiring along the way, I heard quite a lot. The Marquis Lu didn't send anyone to escort me back to the capital but arranged for me to stay. He even arranged for a maid to take care of my daily needs and allowed me to enter and leave the camp freely. I knew he was testing my intentions. So one night, I lifted the curtain of his tent. The Marquis Lu didn't react much to my intrusion. He just lazily glanced at me and then turned his eyes back to the sand table. That night, I sat face to face with the Marquis Lu in the tent, sleepless through the night, with a detailed sand table map laid out in front of us. The Marquis Lu casually fiddled with the small flags on the sand table and asked calmly but inquisitively, Miss Zhao, you must have seen a lot of scenery on your way to the northern border. What are your thoughts on what you've observed? I took a deep breath, recalling the scenes along the way, and spoke heavily. Marquis, indeed, I have seen many heartbreaking sights. I can only describe it in 8 words: dead bodies lie everywhere, the people are destitute. At this point, I paused. The people's lives are unbearable, with famine and ruin everywhere. The Marquis Lu listened quietly, not interrupting me, his eyes flashing a complex look. He gazed at the sand table and said slowly, though the northern border is remote, it's still a part of the country. The years of war have indeed brought a lot of suffering to the people. I nodded. That's exactly why I hope to do something for them. Although I am just a weak woman, if I could contribute even a little, this trip would not be in vain. The Marquis Lu pondered for a moment, his eyes seeming to show a hint of approval, but it quickly disappeared. He looked at me again, his gaze deep. Miss Zhao, your wish is rare. However, the situation in the northern border is not something you or I can easily change. I stared into his eyes, speaking firmly. I understand that changing the situation requires time and strength. But if we don't even try, how can the people's hardships be alleviated? He was silent for a while, seemingly contemplating my words. His fingers tapped the table, and after a moment, he spoke. You are right. The situation in the northern border needs someone to change it, and your determination might be an opportunity. A thought stirred in my heart, sensing that the Marquis Lu seemed willing to cooperate with me, so I tentatively asked. Marquis, are you willing to contribute to the people of the northern border? The Marquis Lu smiled slightly, a hint of cunning flashing in his eyes. If you are willing, we can join forces to improve the situation in the northern border. But you must understand, this is not an easy path. The country has been weak for a long time. Without the Duke Lu and the Marquis Lu guarding the border, the entire country might have long become a meal for other nations. Yet, even with their presence, except for the capital city, other places still suffer in poverty, and the people's lives are hard. The Marquis Lu, having heard my observations and concerns, had a look of deep thought and heaviness in his eyes. He sighed and said, I know what you are saying. The current situation in the country is indeed not optimistic. While we guard the borders against foreign enemies, it's the internal decay that's the hardest to deal with. I nodded, understanding his point. Foreign enemies are certainly terrifying, but internal corruption and incompetence are the true death knell of the nation. If we can start from within, maybe we can bring a glimmer of hope to the people. The Marquis Lu fell into deep thought, his gaze becoming resolute. You are right, the country needs internal reform, or even if there are no foreign invasions, internal chaos will tear it apart. However, reform is easier said than done. One wrong move could lead to greater turmoil. So, we must achieve this with the smallest cost. At this moment, both the Marquis Lu and I instinctively turned our gaze towards the red flag marking the capital on the sand table. The Marquis Lu spoke slowly, his voice low but full of determination. The capital is the center of power and the key to reform. If we can make a breakthrough in the capital, it will lay the foundation for national reform. I nodded in understanding. I am willing to work with you to contribute to the people of the northern border. No matter how difficult the journey, I will persist. He nodded in satisfaction. Good, since you are so determined, we shall move forward together. You should rest well here for now. I will arrange for people to assist you, and we will act when the time is right. That night, we discussed our future plans and steps in detail. I was acutely aware that although the Marquis Lu had deep thoughts, he was also capable and ambitious. As long as we could reach a consensus, we might truly bring a glimmer of hope to the people of the northern border. To have a reason to return to the capital, the Marquis Lu and I held a wedding. Although the wedding was merely a temporary measure, it was carried out grandly enough to fool everyone. 3 days after the wedding, the emperor issued an edict requiring us to return to the capital, which was an excellent opportunity. On the wedding day, the northern border city was brightly lit and bustling with activity. The Marquis Lu, dressed in luxurious wedding attire, looked extraordinarily handsome, his gaze warm and firm as he looked at me. I returned his smile, though inwardly I was secretly nervous. Although this was a wedding for the sake of convenience, we had to act flawlessly for the greater good. After the wedding, my relationship with the Marquis Lu grew closer. Although we were nominally husband and wife, we had an added sense of tacit understanding and trust. On the 3rd day, the emperor's edict arrived as scheduled, requiring us to return to the capital immediately, citing important matters to discuss. We packed up, bringing the necessary attendants and supplies, and embarked on the journey back to the capital. Before departing, the Marquis Lu arranged reliable personnel to continue guarding the northern border, ensuring its safety. He whispered to me, on this journey back to the capital, we must act cautiously as the political situation there is complex, and any mistake could lead us into danger. I nodded, my mind already clear on our plan. After returning to the capital, as soon as we reached the city gate, we saw my heavily pregnant elder sister and my worried mother from a distance. Even Lu Yichen was there. My heart tightened, not knowing why they had come here. The Marquis Lu also noticed the scene and said in a low voice, "It looks like they have come specifically to take you home." When we got closer, my elder sister saw me and showed a complex expression, with the corners of her mouth twitching slightly. It seemed she had something to say but hesitated. Mother took a step forward and held my hand, her face full of concern. "Qing Yao, you've finally returned. I have been worried about your safety outside. Seeing you safe and sound, I can finally be at ease." I smiled slightly to comfort my mother. "Mother, I'm fine. This time, I returned to the capital because His Majesty summoned me, there is nothing else. I will come back to see you after the audience with the Emperor." Louis Chen stood aside, keeping some distance from my elder sister. He only looked at me with a complex expression, as if he wanted to say something but didn't. I glanced at him lightly without saying more. The Marquis Lu smiled slightly and saluted my mother. "Mother-in-law, rest assured, I will take good care of Qing Yao." Elder sister looked at me, with a hint of unease in her eyes. "Sister, I'm really happy to see you back. But, after you left, Mother has been troubled by many household matters, it's really good that you are back." I sneered inwardly but remained calm on the surface. "Thank you, sister, for your concern. Now that I am married to the Marquis and will be residing in the northern borders, I fear I won't be able to accompany Mother often. I hope you can take good care of Mother." Elder sister nodded, but there was a hint of jealousy in her eyes. "Don't worry, sister, I will do my best to take care of Mother." Louis Chen finally spoke, with a trace of complex emotions in his tone. "Qing Yao, I heard you married the Marquis. I wish you a long and happy marriage." I smiled slightly with no waves in my heart. "Thank you for your blessing." Louis Chen no longer stirs any emotions in my heart. Even without deliberately inquiring, I had heard about his matters with my elder sister. Perhaps it was because the once unattained moonlight had turned into earthly dust. After he married my elder sister, they were affectionate only for the first few months. But due to her vying for favor and other reasons, he lost his former affection for her. Plus, with the legitimate wife Bai Weiwei also pregnant now, the entire Duke mansion was in chaos. He was even dismissed from his position by the Emperor, having nowhere to seek peace. Their relationship now could only be described as a mess. Naturally, these matters had nothing to do with me anymore. The conversation at the city gate didn't last long before the Marquis and I were summoned to the palace for an audience. After entering the Golden Throne Hall, the Emperor's expression was stern, no longer the warm demeanor from before. After we saluted, the Emperor got straight to the point. "Marquis Lu, there are a few matters that I need to discuss with you about." He respectfully replied, "I await your Majesty's orders." The Emperor's eyes were sharp, and his words carried a hidden reproach. The war in the northern borders has been draining a lot of the state's treasury resources, yet the situation remains unclear. I believe it is necessary to cut military expenses to alleviate the treasury's pressure. As soon as he spoke, murmurs spread among the ministers, clearly disapproving of the decision. The Marquis frowned slightly but stayed calm. "Your Majesty, the soldiers in the northern borders already live a hard life. Cutting military expenses could affect their morale and combat effectiveness. Without sufficient military funds, the soldiers might even face starvation." The Emperor waved his hand impatiently, cutting him off. "Marquis Lu, the treasury is exhausted, and the people are struggling. Cutting military expenses is a last resort. As the leader of the northern borders, you should consider the bigger picture and understand the court's difficulties." The Marquis bowed and firmly replied, "Your Majesty, I understand the court's difficulties, but the northern borders are the country's shield. Without basic living guarantees, it might affect the war situation, possibly leading to a larger crisis." Seeing this, I knew I had to act. So, I stepped forward and calmly said, "Your Majesty, I believe that cutting military expenses is not the root solution to the problem. We should tackle it from other aspects to increase the treasury's income instead of letting the soldiers suffer more." The Emperor looked at me with a hint of displeasure. "What high opinion do you have?" I responded neither humbly nor haughtily. "Your Majesty, I suggest first rectifying the administrative integrity and addressing corruption. Many local officials are corrupt, causing the treasury to be emptied. Secondly, we can increase support for industry and commerce to promote economic development, thereby increasing tax revenue. These methods can alleviate the treasury's pressure without cutting military expenses. The emperor pondered for a moment, with a hint of contemplation in his eyes, but still did not relent. I will consider your suggestions, but the current treasury difficulties must be addressed immediately. Seeing this, the Marquis spoke again. Your Majesty, I am willing to reduce my salary to help with the treasury's needs. But the military expenses for the northern borders cannot be cut further. The emperor's expression softened slightly, seemingly moved by the Marquis' sincerity, but still somewhat reluctant. Marquis Liu, it's heartening to see your dedication. However, the treasury's situation still requires further discussion. The hall's atmosphere turned tense, with all ministers keeping their heads down in silence. Feeling anxious, I also knew it was not the right time to argue further. Finally, the emperor waved his hand, signaling us to leave. Let's set this matter aside for now. I will think about it further. You may withdraw. Returning to the mansion, the Marquis looked grim. I looked at him, my heart also filled with worry. The emperor's attitude is clear, he is making things difficult for you. He nodded and sighed. He is suspicious of me, afraid that I wield too much military power. Cutting the military budget is just an excuse, the real purpose is to weaken my power. He and I exchanged a look, seeing determination in each other's eyes. At this moment, we had already reached a tacit understanding. Once we had a just cause, we could overthrow the regime and seek a new future for the people. I whispered to him, we must plan quickly, find the right timing and reason to ensure foolproof action. The opportunity came soon. The border conflicts became more intense, yet the court delayed dispatching military funds, leaving the soldiers hungry and demoralized. The Marquis seized this critical moment, forcefully supporting the border. He dispatched trusted generals with provisions and military funds to the border, quickly winning the support of the soldiers. That young general who had collected the bodies for my child and me in a previous life had now become the commander of the border. He and the Marquis acted in unison, completely stabilizing the border situation. The soldiers, grateful for the Marquis' support, grew increasingly disappointed in the court. The young general called out, and the border soldiers responded in droves, forming a massive army marching towards the capital. The arrival of this army created a huge uproar in the capital. Inside and outside the court, people were panic-stricken, and the emperor hastily convened ministers to discuss countermeasures. Only to find that many had secretly defected to the Marquis' faction. The atmosphere in the capital grew unusually tense, with rumors everywhere that the border army was about to storm the capital, overthrowing the decadent and incompetent rule. The Marquis and I secretly communicated in and out of the capital, making comprehensive preparations. One night, urgent bell sounds suddenly came from the palace, and the emperor urgently summoned all the ministers. We knew the time had come. At dawn, the Marquis led his personal troops to join forces with the border army, and they headed straight for the palace. Simultaneously, I led the ministers loyal to us and the capital's citizens to initiate a joint inside-outside action. Inside the palace, the defending soldiers, faced with the vast army, lacked the will to fight and surrendered in droves. In the inner hall, the emperor watched in terror as the troops and angry citizens swarmed in, clearly realizing the overwhelming situation. He trembled and asked the Marquis, what are you doing? The Marquis replied coldly, Your Majesty, the people's grievances are boiling, and the country is in misery, all due to the court's corruption and incompetence. For the people, for the future of the kingdom, I have no choice but to rebel. The emperor slumped in his dragon throne, his face ashen. Is it really to be this way? I stepped forward calmly and said, Your Majesty, the people need a clear, honest court that cares for their livelihood. Please abdicate and let a worthy person take over. The emperor feebly waved his hand and closed his eyes. All right. I will abdicate. The news spread throughout the capital, and the citizens flocked to the streets, celebrating this historic change. Under everyone's recommendation, the Marquis reached the pinnacle of power, but he did not proclaim himself emperor. Instead, he commenced comprehensive reforms as the regent.